In S03-E08, we counted the incidences of certain string popping up in a field, and usually it's a memo field, using a parameter query, and that was good, but it does require that we obviously type in the response to the parameter correctly, and that's usually no problem. But and then it created a report basically that had a summary of the individual records, the count that it found that string on in each of the records, and then a total at the bottom of the form, a grand total for that field. And that's all well and good, but think if you had to do this, maybe you wanted maybe you didn't want to have a formal report. Maybe you just want the thing to tell you, and you want to do several. Maybe you want to type in one and then type in another. E08 could get kind of tedious. I mean, if I had to keep executing that object over and over and over and over to do this, is there another way we could do it? It turns out, yeah, we could do the same type of thing directly in a form, and instead of using a parameter query that prompts the end user, it could actually find the value that's the value of a control on the form and go with that. So I've got another one here is S03-E09 string count in form. So I'm going to show you that one. And again, just like we had before, we have a table, and it just has a couple fields in here, a record identifier and a memo field that's full of text. And of course, this is just an example. If I was doing this in real life, it'd be a lot grander than that. And again, you can see in here we got Wichita popping up in a couple of these over and over, and other ones. Some of these are very long, actually. You're not seeing the whole thing. Uh, and then I have one where I don't have Wichita in it at all. Okay, and it's because I was using Wichita to test it, but I could use anything that I really want to. I could use Texas, and this one would come back, for instance. But I want to find the number of incidences of a substring, basically, in each of these records, in the document field for each of these records. So I create a query just like it's very similar to what I had last time. In fact, it is exactly the same query I had in 08. But you'll see one of the things that's different here is actually have a reference. I'm going to open this up in build so you can see the whole thing. Instead of having a prompt here where I was prompting for what's the string and all that, instead now I'm going to actually look up the string value from a control that is on this form that I've built to do this. Okay, the form is called FRM Big Text, and let's show that. Okay, and the control is called TCB Big Text dash string. So let's go there and do this. Let's look at that and close this down. And so now I've got this form Big Text, and we're going to open it in design view. And I'm going to show you the properties of the form, and that query is now a property of this form, so that when it opens up, it's going to try to use this query. All right, now you'll see that it doesn't work. It won't do anything when it first opens up. It's after it's open that it will actually do some things. All right, but it's basically that query I just showed you before that has a reference now in here back to a control that's on that form. And the control on the form is right here. It's this one called CTB Big Text Dash String. Okay, so whatever value goes, I put in here. This the underlying query will use that then to generate a derived field string count, STRICONT. Again, that's over there in the query. If I look at the query again, I'm sorry, I'm not where I want to be. If we look at the query again, I open that up in build mode. You'll see that it's prefix STRINGCOUNT string count, and that's what that field will be known as, that derived field. And it'll basically have the number of incidences that string pops up in that field for this particular record, in the document field for this particular record. I know. Thank you. All right. So I'm just going to have those fields there. They're not going to be anything that I can actually work with or change. So I've got them set to be, they're enhanced and locked. Enhanced, no, I'm sorry, enhanced. I keep saying enhanced. Enable, no, and locked, yes. So there they are, enable, no, lock, yes. And I also have down here a summary. I'll talk about those in a second, but it's the same type of thing. It's just field that's derived. It's a count. It's the sum, and it's count of all the records is the first one, and the sum of all the strings. I just want to make sure I did set the enabled no, locked yes, good. So that's good, and their tab stop should be no also. Yes, no, no, yes, yes, no. All right, so I just put this one together so I'm fumbling around a little bit. So what's going to happen here is when it first opens, it'll try to run that query immediately. The problem is the form isn't here yet, okay? And because the form's not here yet, it can't refer to this property. So when it finally opens, the query's already been rendered. These things that say string count are going to come up with errors in them, basically. Right? We will get this because it's bound to the records, and that one came in no problem. But we don't have a string count yet because this form isn't open. But that's okay. Once it's open, then we can use it and it will update. Now, one thing to show you though is that I do have. Well, let's just do that. Let's just run it, and then I'll show you the other part. So now I open it up, and you see I've got errors here. Even though it says those records there, it's because it basically doesn't have a string yet. All right, so let's get a string. Let's put Wichita in here. I'll even give you a thing to say, try Wichita, just so you can see this. And there you go. Updated the string count, and it updated the total to be 32. Okay, if I went in here and I replace this with the, you'll see that came up a few times. Replace it with the letter A. You got a lot of them in there. Take it out, and guess what's going to happen? It doesn't have anything to find, so it's going to go back to the error. Now you could actually do an error trap and make that 0 if you wanted to. I don't know if I think this is kind of telling me something when I realize that I'm really not searching for anything right now, so that's okay. I read 0 actually means it didn't find an incident, so it's not really searching right now. But as soon as I put Wichita in there, it does. So I put that Texas in there. And when we had Texas in there, Wichita Falls, remember? Yeah, that's another thing. You can do 2 words. Wichita Falls. Let's do Wichita Falls. Wichita Falls. Came up one time. I think Falls itself probably will only come up one time. Yep. Anyway, you get the idea. But it wasn't enough to just do what I showed you, okay? One of the things I'm going to have to do is every time I change this, I need to requery this whole the entire thing, okay? Now, before I showed you how you requery a control, and I also showed you how you can refresh a form, turns out refresh doesn't work here, okay, in a macro, and I don't know why for sure, but maybe I think because it's trying to refresh a specific thing rather than everything. And so to do everything, you want to requery the whole thing, you just do a requery command and don't put a control name in it. So let me show you that. I just go in here like this, and on the after update property for this control, for the control that's holding the substring, I have a single command requery, and you don't even need to put the control name, and it's done. And so that's it. There's no control name. If I had put this control in, it would requery this one, but it wouldn't have requeried this one. If I could have had a requery of both of them, maybe it would have worked. I don't know. But I found that just doing a requery on the object, and that's how you do it on the form object here, accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. So now you can see down here in the form footer. This is just like the footer that we had in reports, except I found that the sum doesn't work. Remember how we had sum where we could sum up the value? Okay. First off, it's not going to work anyway because this needs to be rendered at the same time. And since these don't count, aren't derived until there's something that's actually set here, this is always going to come back as an error. So I had to do something a little bit different here, and I actually found several people on the internet, several references on the internet that said that they tried to do it like it was in a report too. They just tried to use the sum and then the name of the field that was in that column. In other words, the string count. They tried to do that and it wouldn't work. And one guy said it was because I had it in the query. When I did it flat on the table, it was no problem. But we're deriving this field, so there is no way to do it flat on the table. So when that happens, a way to do this is to do what's called a DSUM. And it's just like a D lookup. Instead of just finding a value, we're going to sum up across many records. Now you can do on this, you can just do our typical count star. It's just going to count the number of records and put that there, okay? But this one, let me open it up for you so you can see it better. Look at the DSUM. You'll see it's got pretty much the same syntax that we had for D lookup. You want the field that you want to bring back, and then whatever holds that field. And right now, that field exists from the query QRP big text, which is the record source for this form. So that's kind of convenient. I've already got that record source, and now I'm going to use it to actually generate the string count. Okay, and don't forget when it uses this, it's going to refer to this unbound box that has the string in it, right? And because it's there on the form at the time that we're requerying this, it'll be able to get that. It won't prompt us for anything like that. It's just there and it'll bring it back in. So we're doing several levels of automation at the same time again here. And then what I want to do is I want to add up the ones where it's not null. So I got not is null string count, and I have to double quote all these as strings that are going to be passed to a function called dsum, and then it will evaluate those as being a constraint on a query. It's basically building kind of a tally query in the background for us. So, and that will come back then with that one particular value, which is the sum of all the string counts that were derived. Now, I should warn you on this. Okay, we only have a few records, so this is happening almost instantaneously. And even with hundreds of records, it happens really fast. But if you get into tens of thousands of records, your D functions, the D sum, the D average, the D lookup, and all that could get kind of slow. And in fact, even having them use a query will make them slow usually. There are ways that you can index fields that might speed things up. I obviously base the string count on that memo field, but the last thing you want to do is index a memo field. Don't ever index a memo field. It will really slow everything down. So in this case, I would just go with this and see how long it goes before it starts to get to be hairy. I don't think it will. I don't think it will slow down that much. I probably could have hundreds of thousands of records in here before it would slow down appreciably. But again, one reason I mainly did this one versus the example in 8 is to show you that I could have something where I could, I'm looking for Wichita, and they also want me to look and see how many times the is in there. And on. And by the way, it's not like I can't print this out. I can always go to File and do a print. And if I do a print preview, you should see what this looks like. See, there it is. Bam. Looks like a little report, and I'm ready to go. So that's kind of a nice little slick thing. Instead of using a report, I use the form to do this because it's interactive. Remember, in a report, I would not have been able to do this at the top. It's rendered once and it's over with. But a form is not rendered once. It's rendered whenever there's an action. So we did the action to update this field, and it rendered the rest of the form then based off of the after update value that I had here. So that's kind of a nice thing to do. Uh, it is not, and I have in the past used forms at just strictly as reports, and that's pretty much what you've got here right now. The only thing interactive on here is this input box for the string, and it's not bound to any database. I'm not managing data here at all. Okay, I'm just inspecting data that already exists in something basically. So that's a nice little way to do this. Okay, someone asked me, is there a way that you could put a report inside a form? Sure, you could have a report buried within in a uh, sub report in a form. You know, all you have to do is drop the control in or drop it into it and it'll do it. And guess what? You could do it vice versa. You could have a form and a report, but remember, if a form's in a report, you wouldn't be able to do the things that we just did here. You wouldn't have interactive capability. Okay. Truthfully, I don't know why you'd ever want to do that myself, but I can see situations where you'd have a report in a form. If it's just there to give you a read-only guidance to something that may exist somewhere in your database, but you want to manage the record of a different table or a different record set, then you could do that having a report and buried in a form. So, anyway, nice little deal, and there's probably 50 or 60 other ways that you could do this, but it is something that we do quite a bit in regular databases when we ask people to provide interactive capability and then give them some kind of let them know what the consequences of those things are. So anyway, hope this helped you out, and please look at the other ones. Thanks a lot.